All right. So today we're going to talk a little bit about ancestors. And we wanted to do something on theme for the holiday when this will be released. I don't know when you will be listening to this or tuning in, but this will be released around Halloween. And there's a lot of directions we could have gone with themes or what to do around Halloween. But one thing that's been coming up for me, and I feel that is very relevant around this time of year, is the thinning of the veil
Mm.
and tapping into the connection we have with our lineages and ancestry, as we were saying before.
I also think it's very appropriate because, as you were talking about ancestry, and at times when we're starting to get together with family and the thinning of the veil, that this idea of actually calling in them or calling upon them or connecting with them when we're going through maybe some harder transitions. That makes sense.
Yeah. So for the pagans out there, Halloween is known as Samhain, and Samhain is, I think it's originally from Gaelic and marks the changing of seasons and the really beginning of darkness, which I think is very ironic because depending on where you are in the United States, actually, so Samhain is technically on the 31st of October or the 1st of November. And that's actually the day we turn our clocks back. So it makes it even darker in the evenings. But we have cultures all around the world that this kind of somehow lines up. Like in Latin America, we see Dia de los Muertos, which is on the first as well. And it's interesting because I don't really feel like I have a strong connection to my lineage. And depending on who you are, a lot of people, I think in the United States, we only go back like 2 generations, right? And we don't really know too much further back from that. And I've never really had an interest, to be honest. And I've never really cared. I guess in all honesty, I still kind of half don't. However, there's been a lot that's come up this year around the importance of knowing where we come from, right? Or having connection to some respect for what's come before us. And tapping into that can be really powerful. And when we're bringing it into fertility, even birth and postpartum, it can be even more powerful to look at these things or question these things or relate to these things because there are biological and energetic impacts that really do carry through lineages. And that can be, I do believe in past lifetimes. So that can be this lifetime or past lifetimes. And when we at least hold space for honoring the lineages or the places that have brought us here more than just the life experiences we've lived, but the people who have carried the seed for us to be here, then there is a real power and deepening your known felt sense through fertility, pregnancy, and birth as you bring another, as you continue to pass that seed and become part of that lineage and carry that lineage on. So, yeah, I can just start with that. And there's a way to honor these things, even if you don't really have an interest in knowing your exact backgrounds. I don't know exactly, we have some idea what cultures I came from beyond the mix of the United States, as we call it. However, you can still honor and ask and lean into the wisdom of those that came before you. And this is a really beautiful time of year to do that. It doesn't even have to go that far back. It's nice to feel into that. You can simply honor just the people who've passed that are in your family, whether you had a good connection with them or not, and just taking a moment and giving a little time and space for that really can have ripples into the present moment, the past, and the future at the same time.
Yeah, there's a lot there. And it's interesting because we've actually talked about ancestry a little bit in another podcast. And it's interesting you talked about how it relates to birth because I've been at births where we tell the birthing person, that there's been a whole generation of women past that have done this. So like really lean on them and sink into the collective wisdom that has come as you're birthing this baby. And I definitely have found that it provides some strength and support that can't be given in other ways. So I love that you relate that in. And from an ancestral point of view, even if we talk more scientifically, like that's the genes. Whether or not we acknowledge our ancestors in a way, they're still really embodied in us in a way that makes up who we are. I love that other cultures really take the time to honor their ancestors because it's something that we should be doing too in some capacity, right? And one of the favorite things, I love the idea that when you're carrying a female baby, they're actually carrying your grandkids, right? And vice versa. Our grandmother was carrying us technically because our mother's egg, our mother was born and then we were the eggs.
It's easy with the woman, the seed within the seed within the seed. And that's not seen as much in the man. There's an interesting thing because I do think as a woman, sometimes there is that deep connection with that seed within seed. It's very fascinating. You can go down a lot of rabbit holes. But I just think it's interesting because Halloween in general can be such a kid-focused holiday. And if you're not of practice with tapping into traditions like Dia de los Muertos or like just knowing like the veils are thin and I'm going to listen to my guides. If you're not in that practice, it can be so kid-focused, but really in ancient tradition, this time was very ancestral focused, like looking more to the elders. I find that a really interesting dynamic and one that can actually be a balancing thing when you bring them together at this time. And it can be even just be a reminder of, hey, maybe I take a minute and sit with my grandpa or whoever the most elder person is and just listen to them for a minute or ask them some questions. It can be as simple as what was this time of year like for you as a kid and bringing things full circle. Do you have any special practices this time of year? Do you do the ofrenda or anything like that?
I don't. And yeah, I would say my only practice really around this time of year is Thanksgiving and getting together with family. Sadly, all my grandparents have passed, so I don't get to talk with them much anymore. But it is interesting because our generation is the last generation to actually hear firsthand about World War II. And with kids these days, because they're going to probably be asking us questions about COVID, what our experience
Yeah.
was on that, right? I think what I really hear is that drawing in the power of your ancestors' stories and how they lived, and in a way, how that can teach us and what we can learn from it, right? Because every generation before us, they want a better life for the generation that they're upbringing. We want a better life for our kids. Our kids are going to want continued on. In those stories, it's where there's a lot of lessons and honoring them that we allow that to come into our being too.
Yeah. And even just something like I practice this time of year, if you have an altar, is putting photos of loved ones that are lost, whatever age they are, and pets, creating a little temple, a home temple, and potentially having a candle for each one. So when you light it, you're reconnecting with the spirit of that person, the fire, the spirit. That's a simple practice that you can do. This is such a powerful time. You do simple practices like this if you do have children, where, the kids will see pictures of these people who passed. Who is that? Ask questions. And they don't need to really carry that with them or know, but it is a simple connection, a small connection where you're honoring and then keeping that thread slightly going. I don't know who my great grandparents are really. I've occasionally seen a picture of them and heard them in stories, but I do think there is a little bit of carrying on that light. The spirit gets carried on, even if it's not physically carried on in photos or in stories or whatever. There is a little bit of that passing or connection. And another thing is with the veil being thin, it's a good time to, if you're stuck in life or you're not really sure, to call upon the wisdom of your ancestors. And that can be ones that are way, way, way back. And again, like from past lives, that's a really powerful thing of just calling upon the wisdom of your ancestors during this time of year and asking for guidance, letting that be and seeing what comes through and seeing what comes up or seeing what pops up in your life from that. Just simply letting them hold the torch for a little bit of finding out the next step or the how or the why or whatever it is. That's another powerful practice.
Absolutely. I love it. I definitely will do something with my kiddos this year to honor it. And that's interesting because they say the life expectancy is now declining. And I was able to meet my great grandmother a few times. She lived to 101 or 102. So I was very lucky in that way. It's nice to think back to those times that I was with her and hearing about her stories growing up, and sharing those with your kids can be really valuable too. It's so simple. So simple.
I was just thinking, laughing in my mind too, families have the switch witch. You've heard about the switch witch with the candy? Oh, I don't know how it exactly works. Look it up, but it's like a witch that you can give your candy to, and then they exchange it for something else.
Okay.
Maybe it's money. I don't know. And it helps to encourage children to eat less of their candy from Halloween.
Got it.
But I was just laughing in my mind. You can make little offerings, little plates for offerings. Right. I do that often on my altars for deities and whatnot, and planetary energies. Another good way to help your kids use their candy without putting it in their body. Make an offering to the grandparents of all the candy.
Right.
Good. I know sweetbreads are a really common thing in Latin America. And
yeah. I think it's something that we definitely need to bring into our life too. It's really smart.
And we have another podcast episode that really dives deep into the importance of connection in your journey from fertility, birth, postpartum. But this is just like a small piece. And that was brought up to me earlier this year. A lot of us are kind of starved for connection. And part of that is feeling unrooted. Like we don't have this connection from the past that trickles into where we are now and why people are seeking connection in these spaces. There's nothing from where they came from, right? And that can kind of lead to a little bit of the situation that we're in now, where people just are so starved in some way for connection and the ripple effects of that. So this can be one small piece of just finding connection within ourselves in a way, because we are from this space and these places and these energies, and yet we've kind of forgotten them or abandoned them.
Right. Yeah. It makes me think too that I've heard somewhere, and I'm not fully aware of how this operates, but I'll talk about it, is this idea that our ancestors too in the past obviously suffered in different ways than we have. And that sometimes that suffering can actually get locked into the physical body. And sometimes we have issues or things that come up in our life, and it's actually really in a way unrelated to us, but it trails back and is connected to our ancestry. And I really like this idea. Why we talk about ancestry is this idea of when we heal ourselves, we're actually healing all of time and all of our ancestry. And rightfully, if we can find out what those moments of things that are blocked for us or whatever we're experiencing, that if it is rooted to our ancestry, that taking this time and maybe making those offerings will help to clear that out too.
Exactly. And I think this is where, let's say you're struggling with fertility, ask upon your ancestors, what should I be doing here? What is the guidance? And you never know what will come through, because like you said, we physically are carrying the genetics of our ancestors. That's why people did 23andMe and all these things where like we physically have that. And then psychologically, energetically, we're carrying also what's been passed down to us. And there is science behind that shows things like anxiety or what you can be holding on to, the energy. For example, if you have a great grandpa that lived in the Great Depression, you can hold on to that energy still and not even be sure why. It doesn't have to come from your parents or even your grandparents, your great grandparents. It's so far removed, but that energy is passed through, and it can, they say, skip generations sometimes and then come back up. So yeah, 100%. That's why there's a lot of benefits to doing this work anytime, but honoring it in this season, being on, as we're on theme.
Yeah. And it's suiting actually, because it's fall, and especially up here where I'm at in Reno. And you think about it, it's this in-between period of life and death, right? Where there's still life from the summer, and then we're going into this part of death and winter. It's a perfect time, a good time to remember to call the ancestries. But like you said, I think anytime's a great time.
In the States, we go from this, like you said, between the fall and the winter of this life and death into Thanksgiving, which is, I think, a nice full circle. Okay, we give honoring, we give connection to our past, and it's almost like then we come back to this life and give thanks for this life, right? We're circling back. I know that's not what Thanksgiving was originally about, but we can make it about that now.
Yeah, we can change it. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. I love it.
Any other final words here?
No, I think you gave some great ideas of honoring the ancestors in any way we can, and coming up, if we have elders, to sit and chat with them and ask them about their life, or even their parents' life or their grandparents' life, because then you get really back in the generations.
And you can ask very random questions. You can even ask ChatGPT or Google it. There was one I asked. I try to do this now every time I'm with my grandparents who are older. Just something as simple as, what was your summers like as a kid? And then who knows where that will go from there. And they'll take it and talk about these things that we feel like are only in history at this point. And it's just interesting. But yeah, I recommend taking a moment, getting curious about your ancestry, getting curious, even if that just means connecting within yourself and asking for guidance. It doesn't need to be a physical manifestation of a person. It can just be the energy of where you came from or where you were rooted to. And if you have a practice around this that we haven't talked about, that you think is an amazing practice to share or just a fun practice to share, please let us know. We always like to follow up with the things we missed, or it could spark a whole nother episode. And we have an amazing voicemail. I'm all about doing the voice memos. So you can click the link in our show notes and you can just leave us a voice note. So easy. We do have an email list. If you're not on that, you can join that as well. Or just reach out to us directly via email. All of that information is in the show notes.
To all our ancestors that brought us here at this moment, thank you.
Honoring the ancestors, honoring the land, honoring the elements of this earth, and moving into the months ahead. Here we go.